Unravel's defining quality is how it makes you feel nostalgic. It takes you on this journey through the life story of an elderly woman, and it does it by transporting you into 12 pictures that hang on the wall in her house. You don't actually play the game inside these static pictures, but instead within the very scene where each photo was taken. Somewhere along the background of these 12 landscapes, you'll find the subjects of each photograph. They're sort of eternally suspended in their camera poses, and they're assembled in a towering glitter of fairy light. It looks beautiful. So it's not quite real, and it's not quite supernatural either. You're essentially playing through a memory. And what works so well is how some of these memories seem so familiar. There's a memory of a day at the seaside. Another is of a cold and drizzly trip through the woods. These places and scenes, they naturally sort of kick loose some of your own memories. The ones that are buried deep down in your mind, those memories you have that you treasure, those memories you have that still hurt, and those memories that you have that do both of those things. Eventually the game tells you something really powerful about those memories. Now I won't spoil what the message is, and to be honest it doesn't really work by saying it aloud anyway. But I will say it's pretty uncommon for a game to have such a helpful and positive thing to say. Another is how dazzlingly gorgeous the game is. Its depiction of life at ankle height has impeccable attention to detail. It's the little things, quite literally, that win you over, like how the moss grows on the neglected side of a stone bench, or how the paint at the base of banisters cracks and forms into a brittle skin. The audio design is even more impressive. Unravel features no spoken words, no narration, and developer Coldwood Interactive has instead hinged much of the narrative on the soundtrack. The gamble has paid off tremendously. The aching sorrow of the violins and panpipes, the bittersweet folk music that carries this Celtic vibe, it all swells and stirs along with you just so wonderfully. Otherwise, it's a fairly standard puzzle platformer, at least mechanically. The character you're looking at now is Yarny, an adorable, accident-prone, panicky hero made of wool. He is useless, insofar as he can't swim, or talk, or punch, or duck, or backflip, or pretty much any of the things Mario can do. As Yarny journeys through each of the game's 12 levels, his body leaves a trail of string. This is a problem, because if he walks too far, he's reduced to this gaunt wireframe. Eventually he can't go any further, he's tethered to the spot, he's tugging on this remaining thread of string. The way you keep him going is by collecting balls of wool that are scattered throughout each world. They sort of temporarily replenish Yarny's body. On occasion you'll need to backtrack through each level and simplify Yarny's trail too. That's in order to free up some slack. But Yarny's weakness is also his strength. His party trick is throwing a lasso of string out from his arm, Spider-Man style, which allows him to do all kinds of action hero things. He can climb over rocks, he can abseil down trees, he can swing across perilous puddles of rainwater. Conveniently, each level is dotted with knots of wool that Yarny can attach his string to, and thus create a whole range of tools such as rope bridges or trampolines. Most of the game's obstacles, and certainly from the second level onwards, demand a mixture of these tools to be fashioned in the correct order. Much of Unravel's charm comes from how its puzzles, and indeed their solutions, are concocted from everyday items. A crushed can of cola is a couch-sized step. A fallen tree branch is a makeshift bobsleigh. Such imagination spreads into the hazards and obstacles too. A clump of garden weeds is an impassable thicket. And there's this field vole too. I won't go into it, but he becomes your worst nightmare. But if you're curious about Unravel simply because you want to be challenged, this game will come off as solid but unspectacular. Aside from a few memorable exceptions, Unravel's underpinning mechanics prove to be a bit too basic, to the extent that most puzzles aren't particularly satisfying, or at least they're not enjoyable enough. Eventually, solutions can be kind of gathered just by observing the convenient placement of knots around you. There's a lack of pondering, a lack of experimenting. You're not really stumbling into new problems, you're just going through variants of old problems. And I found that by level 5, the challenges had lost their creativity to the extent that they actually began to outstay their welcome. Unravel is really good at exposing its own problems, particularly because most levels drag on a little longer than they should. And sometimes Unravel doesn't play by its own rules either. For example, the length of your lasso occasionally stretches out way further than you were expecting, but that's only because, at that precise moment, the game needed it to. Even worse, the distance you can travel before your string runs out varies wildly. There's a fair counter-argument in that, had Unravel stuck to the laws of physics with scientific rigour, it would probably cease to be as fun. But for a game with physical conundrums at its core, it needs at the very least to be consistent with its own laws. If you play Unravel long enough, a tiny but noticeable distrust will have built between you and the game. Especially since everything else works so well. Unravel is a gorgeous storybook adventure, a tale of a doll brought to life who travels through the faded memories of his owner. But assessed purely on gameplay, it's a bit like Yarny himself. It's alluring and pleasant, just not quite robust enough.